Here we're talking about breaking through an opponent's defenses. We're going to start off with two rooks here. Typically speaking, you want to try to use a rook lift. Did not do that in this example, but let's say we do, and let's say white plays this. To block, we can shift over, putting pressure on h2, which forces white there. Or, if they don't go there, let's say they go here instead, that opens up the door for this pawn hanging. Now, of course, they can defend that way, but essentially, by that time, we have improved our position to the point where it's not bad. Now, in this case, what we ended up doing is I ended up going to e4. I got very lucky. White did not put its rook here, which would have kind of made a problem because, okay, we can't really take, we could take, but now it's a trade-off there. We don't want a trade-off situation. We want to get our rook into place. We get lucky. White pushes the pawn. We go ahead and play our other rook to e8, doubling them up. Now we've got something. Now white brings both of its rooks to the back row. It's going to be a little bit of a problem.
Check.
There's a check. And, of course, the intent is to take h2 and double up the rooks on the second row, which we get right there.
Check.
And from there, it's
check.
A series of checks.
Check.
And then decide to check one more time and then spread it out, hoping to get white to offer a trade, which it does. And, of course, we're not going to take that trade. We want to finish this game off. So we play the e-rook to d2, check. And, of course, the other rook in position for checkmate. In this game right here, we take a little bit different approach. Key thing is we would like to get our knight right here for a fork, but that's not possible right now. So we're going to take a different approach here. What we decide to do is play our queen to h4, sacrificing our rook. And, of course, we decide to capture it back with our king. And at this point, white decides to push the pawn forward, which is perfect for us because now that opens the door for the fork. And it allows us to take the rook. Okay, now we have a better opportunity here. We're going to push the pawn forward right there, to which white sets up a decent defense, but all we need right now is to get something on the back row, either the rook or the queen, with no piece defending. First, we're going to start off with a check by the queen by taking d4.
Check.
King moves out of the way. Now we're going to use our bishop, to which point white offers a trade for queens. However, we also had another opportunity on the check that we missed, which was we could capture the rook, which is what we're going to do now because we had time to think about it to realize what was going on.
Check.
White checks. We move our king out of the way. And now we can get our rook into place. White's going to check again. But white's intention is to remove that pawn, which it does right there. However, that opens up the door for mate in 2 if white does not capture the queen. If white does capture the queen, it's just a longer game. But in this case, white did not capture the queen and moved out of the way. And that set up checkmate right there. This game right here is the concept of multiple ideas thwarted. We're trying to go after white's king. It's kind of in a corner, so we decide to move our king out of the way, looking to get the rooks in place. Okay, we get one rook into place. We get the other rook to follow. Now we're really hoping that white doesn't capture with the knight, because that would be bad. Because we capture right here, and our position isn't as strong. So we're hoping they don't do that. We get lucky on that little spot right there. They don't. They decide to push the pawn forward, which is great for us, because now that means we can move our bishop out of the way and defend from anything the knight could do. Yeah, pretty much anything the knight could do except for going back here. So we've got it defended. That's good. White decides just to get his king out of the way. Okay, it's going to change the calculus here. We're going to push this pawn here. And what we got to watch out for is White's bishop. White's got a bishop. We're going to have to move our king out of the way eventually. Okay, move our king out of the way there. Now we push one of the pawns forward. Now the other option was to push this pawn here. I elected to instead push the pawn and put pressure on the side, try to isolate the king. To which White responds by putting its rook in place. Okay, maybe that's not a trade we want to make. Move the king out of the way a little more. King moves out of the way. Now let's push the other pawn. And instead of going for the side, we're going to go up the middle or try to open up that F file. So that's the idea there. We push the pawn. And we go ahead and instead of capturing with the G pawn, we capture with the G5 pawn. We capture with the G4 pawn. The reason why is we have the queen defending the G5 pawn. So that's why we do that. And we want to create a little diversion here. Okay, that opens up some space. Now we can capture with the G5 pawn. And that pawn is defended. So the queen can't capture it. White moves his queen out of the way. Okay, time to get our queen in position. Looking to triple up. Unfortunately, White does not see that its rook on B1 is exposed. And we get very lucky. Again, complicated positions, it's easy to miss something, which happens right here. Well, it wasn't totally exposed. It was covered. We were going to push on the H pawn, basically. That was the intent here, but now White's blocking it. White's got 3 defenders. However, that opens the door for that rook. Again, complicated positions. Sometimes you make mistakes. But that's the thing when you're focusing on attacking in a transposition. You want to look at every possible angle and try to think things through. Because if you can do that, you're going to win more often than not. But you got to make sure you know which pins are in place and stuff like that. So we get the queen in place. Queen is threatened again.
Check.
We go ahead and check. And remember, we can't capture here because that's defended by the queen. Just to point that out. So we go ahead and check here. And in this spot right here, I should have gone with the knight, but I went with the queen.
Check.
Captured right there. And then we did a little back and forth. Now I realized, oh, maybe I should bring the knight in to defend or to attack. So we bring the knight in right there, threatening the queen and the bishop, to which White makes a really good move. Pretty much forcing, I mean, I could check right here, but then queen takes, so that's not a good spot. So it forces me to capture with the queen right there.
Check.
There's a check by the rook, and we get lucky. White decides to take care of the knight, which opens the door for the rook to come through. And at this point, White decides to resign. In our final example right here, we'd like to have the knight and queen hook up, preferably getting our queen to G2, but White's knight has something to say about it, and we're going to have to move our rook out of the way, because our rook's in a little bit of trouble as it's being attacked by the queen and the knight. So, okay, we move our rook out of the way. Now we're going to take our queen and go to F6, threatening the knight and forcing it to move back. Now, we got to be careful here. Our rook is now under threat by the knight. This is the dangerous thing about knights, is they can make 1 or 2 moves and it changes your calculations on everything. And one little mistake can cost you the game, but on the flip side, if you're doing stuff with your knight, sometimes 1 or 2 moves might find something that even you didn't expect and you find a win. So anyway, enough about knights. We're going to move our rook out of the way. Okay.
Check.
We get in check. We're going to move our king to the only square it can go, which is H7. And of course, White's queen is threatening to take our rook. But we have it protected by the queen. So we're moving our queen into place. What we're looking to do is get our knight to F4 and get our queen in place. Okay, a little curveball there. Now, I probably still could have gone with knight to F4, but I didn't. I decided to check with the queen. on g3 because it was
Check.
protected. Maybe not the best move in this spot, looking back at it. However, we do have to get this rook out of the way. That's why we move it to e8, because remember, it's being attacked by the queen. Now white's trying to move its king out of the way. Now we take our knight and go to f4, looking to set up with the queen. We're hoping white doesn't defend with the queen. If white defends with the queen, then we got to come up with another plan. Fortunately, white does not. And that sets up the door for
Checkmate.
checkmate.